I want to say this directly before I give my thoughts here. I understand in the Latford system, the racing would be different, right? You don't get the Hail Melon move in a straight up points battle, right? And I guess that's why some people like the system and everything. Yeah. I understand the racing would be slightly different. The results would be slightly different. When you look at the non-playoff standings, or what if we still had the Winston Cup format or any format like we tallied them up in 1975, I get it. I get the argument that it's a waste of time, because in some ways it is, because we're not going back to that. I understand all of that, okay? But when you can look at the results throughout the season, you can look at somebody's performance throughout the season. Like Kevin Harvick in 2020, I think is the most obvious recent example, right, of somebody who just went out and, he already had his one win to get into the playoffs, and he just kept racking them off, and he had 9 wins total, and he doesn't even get to the championship 4, even with all those playoff points that were building and got stacked up, and he had a second place finish in that round of 8, and he doesn't even advance to the championship 4. And then you have a guy like Joey Logano this year, and again, like you said, Brandon, no disrespect, right? He did everything he needed to do with the system that he has been given. It's not his fault. Hendrick Motorsports goofed on Alex Bowman's weight. It's not his fault that they got disqualified and they left him back in. But Steven Stumpf tweeted this out yesterday. With 3 races left, Logano will end 2024 with the fewest top 5s and top 10s since his JGR tenure. He last raced for Joe Gibbs Racing in 2012. He was 22 years old. That's how long it's been. He has 6 top 5s all year, 11 top 10s. You have to go all the way back, I guess, to 2012 when he had 12 top 10s, only 2 top 5s in 2012. 2011 before that, only 4 top 5s and 6 top 10s. So it has statistically been the worst season in terms of average finish, average performance. I know he's got 3 wins, but in terms of average performance, his weakest season since he joined Team Penske. But because, hey, he got hot at the right time, he got a little bit lucky with only doing the bare minimum to get into the round of 8, actually really doing less than the bare minimum when you think about it, because he didn't get into the round of 8. And the only reason he's in the round of 8 is because Hendrick Motorsports goofed on the weight of Alex Bowman's car, and that led to a disqualification that got him back in. But all you have to do is win 1 race, regardless of how you got here or how many playoff points you have. So I don't know. I feel like even playoff supporters have to look at this and, number one, understand why people aren't a huge fan of this system. But number 2, I think you have to acknowledge that it's not perfect. And it can lead to, what was the word you used, Brandon? Dopey situations here?
Yeah, dopey things.
Just think about this. If Logano wins this title, I don't know. This is the goofiest championship on the Cup side of things since Kyle Busch 2015.
Yeah. Yep.
And I mean and again, not remarkable comeback.
Not taking that championship away.
No. Yeah, I mean, he's a deserving champ. Everything that he went through that year, I mean, he was concerned that it might be a career-ending injury. But I mean, you still look at that and you say, I mean, it has to be the first time since the 60s, right? That somebody didn't run the full schedule and still walked away with a championship. And what other series could you do that? Only run, high 60s, low 70s percentage of the season and still win the championship. And I mean, people talk about Jimmy Johnson in 2016, and he kind of got hot at the right time, and I get that, but I feel like he still ended up like 8th in the standings if you just tally up the points. Probably the weakest overall performance of his 7 titles, but again, take nothing away from him. He went out and Carl Edwards threw that block, and I mean, it's the system that we have now, right? More power to the drivers that take advantage of it. But I can't look at Joey Logano's season here, and honestly, we'll get into this in just a moment. I can't look at AJ Allmendinger's season in the Xfinity Series compared to how he ran in 2022. He had a Kevin Harvick-like 2020 season just a couple of years ago in Xfinity, and the same thing happened to him. He had 5 races all year where he wasn't inside the top 10 of the race results. But 2 of those 5 races came in the round of 8. And even with all those playoff points and all those good results that led up to that round of 8, it wasn't enough. And he is now, by virtue of this win at Las Vegas and what otherwise has been a down year for him, he's now guaranteed to finish higher in the standings this year than he did in 2022. If you asked anybody which year was a better season overall for AJ Allmendinger, and you look at the final standings and you see he's fourth, he's minimum fourth this year. He was fifth in 2022. If that's all you look at, you would think, oh, well, I guess he was stronger this year, right? But anybody that lived through both of those seasons will tell you, I mean, Colleague was on another level just a couple of years back. I mean, how many times have we talked on this show about, what is going on with Colleague Racing? Why can't they find the speed that they had just a couple of years ago? They had this meteoric rise, and now they've kind of come back crashing down to earth. And how can they recapture that magic? I don't know. It leaves me, even as somebody who's, I mean, again, if you watch the show, you forgive me for getting a little bit personal here for a second. I've been a AJ Allmendinger fan for many years. He was my childhood favorite. I've got all three of his diecasts right here behind me from his Cup wins, but I can't, and I know I'm not supposed to anyway, because I'm in a different stage in my life now, doing this show with you, Brandon, doing my work for Brock Beard and lastcard.info. I can't actively root for drivers in the same way that I used to. I can't actively cheerlead for them on the air. But even the kid inside of me, can't look at what happened at Vegas this weekend and be as happy as he'd like to be, because, I'm so, I guess, stuck in my ways is what the people that disagree with me on this system would say I am. But I'm sorry. I believe in the integrity of a full season championship. And it doesn't matter if it's the Xfinity Series or the Truck Series or what we just saw yesterday with the Cup Series. I'm going to die on that hill above any other hill. And I'm not a fan of stage racing, but if you want your stage points, you can have them. If you want unlimited attempts at overtime, you can have them. I'm sorry. This is the number one hill that I'm going to die on in this sport, and I'm not going to apologize for it.
You shouldn't have to. I mean, Colleague was just,
I don't know, Brad. I mean, Pete Pistone's been on the morning drive for the last couple of years now, saying if you're still clinging to a full season title, it's been this way for 2 decades, guys. You really need to get to a group to try to work your way through that, because it's not going anywhere. Like, I mean, that's the mentality that some of these people have. And then what I find so ironic is that we'll turn around the next day, we'll see the ratings are down another 5 or 6% year to year. And the same people that said, well, if you guys don't like it, you just got to get over yourselves or quit watching at a certain point. And then they turn around and are like, man, we've got some really good racing going on right now. Why are the ratings down?
I mean,
I don't know. Maybe the people that you said, if you don't like it, don't watch it. Maybe they actually stopped watching. It's a possibility.
I still have a serious problem, Ben, when you have someone like AJ Allmendinger or Joey Logano, which we're talking about both of them here on the show today, where their performance, either the performance or the lack thereof, does not reflect where they finish at the end of the year, as far as placement for the end of the year. That just shows a fundamental flaw.
And I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's, again, what have I said on the show before as well? It's not just the champion. Harrison Burton had a phenomenal career-defining moment at Daytona this year. And like I said, I'm thrilled for him. I'm thrilled that the Wood brothers finally got to celebrate their 100th win. It's such and Jeff Burton being in the booth. I mean, unbelievable moment. Heartwarming moment. That moment alone should not leapfrog him 18 spots in the point standings. Harrison Burton has not been a 16th place in the standings driver this year. That, I don't think saying that takes away from his Daytona win. That's one individual race. Where you finish in the standings should be representative of your full season. Martin Truex Jr. was top 5 in the standings just a couple of years ago, really, in 2022. But that was the first year of a next-gen car. We had all this parity. We were getting all of these different winners. And Ryan Blaney was just ahead of him. He was the lone other non-winner. I think he won the All-Star race. But it was down to Blaney and Truex for like the only spot to point your way in. And when you look at points, they were 2nd and 4th or something like that going into the final race of Daytona. And you're telling me Martin Truex Jr. is locked out of any position in the points higher than 17th? That's the highest he can finish in points. And we're going to look back and say, oh, Truex, he was 17th in points. He must have had a really down year, really uncharacteristically bad year. He had a great year. He just did everything but win a race. And that places such an emphasis. There's such an emphasis placed on that. that it leads to wacky situations in the standings like this, where you have guys, again, forget the championship for a second. The championship's obviously the most notable, most prestigious part of it. But you can look all up and down the standings and say, like, I think Kyle Busch last year. I think Kyle Busch, RCR kind of came back down to earth after their hot start after he joined last year. I think he was something like 13th in points last year at the end of the playoffs when it was all said and done. And I don't know. I feel like, Busch won 3 races. He was very strong at the start of the year. He probably should have been a few positions higher in points than that. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of examples off the top of my head here, but it's not just the issue of who the champion is. It's all throughout the standings for me. And again, I'm sorry. That's the one hill that I will die on above all the other ones.